I'm back, Hollywood. Welcome to Pitching Steven Spielberg 12 Stories. Many a stellar film has been made from a short story. Dolores Claiborne. This volume, Mud Valley, was written when I was a novice to old age, in other words, 60, and it contains 13 short stories, and this is one of them. It's called Bet's Boil. Pardon me if I have to boot it. Time. Chapter 1, End of an Era. Bet's boil wasn't a boil, it was a zit, the mother of all zits. Nestled in her previously adorable underarm, it grew overnight from not there to disconcerting proportions. Large, conical, white-tipped, and angry red, its surface, impressive though it be, merely topped its subcutaneous, cherry-sized base, the total leaving her not only discomfited, but appalled, for it was the first abnormality her 19-year-old, hitherto flawless body had produced. Chapter 2, Bet's Early Years. Bet's conception, incubation, and nativity went smoothly, producing an infant of such surpassing beauty, in many parts of the world she'd have been switched at birth, for serious profit. Being Canadian, she escaped such mishap, but was guarded carefully for a few years to come nonetheless by her deservedly nervous parents, so hypnotically beguiling was little Bet as an infant and toddler, with her huge, unfathomable eyes of infinite depth, that evoked possession-lust wonderment in all who dwelt, however briefly, therein. Chapter 3, 5 to 8. Bet effortlessly morphed from adorable pink chubbydom to a rarity, since her proportions by the age of 5 made her look, for all the world, like a wingless angel. A startling, oddly disturbing phenomenon, a phenomenon that continued unabated as she grew. Chapter 4, 9 to 13. By her 9th year it was clear to all that respectfully serving Bet in some fashion was a natural consequence of her stunning beauty, a beauty that for some inexplicable reason failed to render her arrogant. Having virtually everyone in love with her all her days made the world a wonderful place for Bet, Mud Valley being, in many ways, an ideal spot for a child to grow up, its natural charm and overall prosperity guaranteeing she'd know no want nutritionally, educationally, or spiritually. For her homeschooling parents, prosperous university-matriculated full-blown mystics, were sufficiently advanced to understand every day is holy and every thought, word, and deed instantaneously judged, and thus had outgrown the trappings of religion, permitting their child to immerse herself in the wonders of nature, rather than the still common strictures of badly interpreted, archaic tomes. Thus Bet grew to pubescence in a manner to be envied anywhere, exploring the valley on her beloved horse Shackleton, and ranging far out to sea, a welcome guest on pleasure craft or working boats alike. Being an observant soul, she, at 12, experienced her first intellectual epiphany by consciously noting that every human she encountered, regardless of age, race, or personality, was at their best with her, a commonality that personified delicate deference. Pondering this uniqueness, she spent long, introspective hours contemplating the why of it, till her mother, inheriting a superb Victorian standing mirror, placed it in sleeping Bet's room late Christmas Eve of her 13th year, a surprise for her tasteful daughter's awakening. Chapter 5, The Mirror. Bet's mirror did not possess magical properties other than reflecting egoless truth, and the truth is, Bet was flawless. From the moment she awoke to this fact on that first revelatory Christmas morn, and for the next 5 years, she took daily delight in tilting the mirror just right and studying herself for hours in every conceivable position, an obsession that not only confirmed her beauty, but seriously enhanced it, for the contortioning required for such maneuvers added immeasurably to her already formidable health and grace. As for her muscle tone and wind, climbing trees like a monkey had ever been her primary physical pleasure, a pleasure that kept her body buff, her mind alert, her lungs sound, and her soul vista-fed. Inevitably, at 18, Bet, being an honest creature, was even more in awe of herself than everyone else, for only she had seen her naked perfection celebrated by intimate display day after day, season after season, the why me of it still a mystery. Chapter 6, The Spank. Will, 28, passing through Mud Valley, overleapt chronic courtesy by helplessly observing his hitherto gentlemanly hand administer a cracking smack to the stunningly fetching bottom that suddenly appeared before him at a farmer's market, only to see it spin around in shock and perplexity, the occurrence being utterly beyond Bet's experience too, and their eyes locked at instant till death and beyond, if possible, soul-mate union. Chapter 7. Parting. Bet and Will humped like hamsters for the next 2 weeks, till Will simply had to go, had to tie off the threads of his previous life, and transport his goods back to Bet. Those goods being 2 cameras and thousands of negatives stretching back 20 years, on every noteworthy subject his reverential eye had encountered photographically, other than studies of naked femininity, a gap hitherto shy Will intended to fill with a vengeance. Chapter 8. Apple's Worm. With Will to be absent an interminable week, Bet redoubled her mirror fixations, honing herself to a perfection she suspected would not only enhance his adoration and lustiness, but stun the world, when her beloved's camera unleashed her charms to its eye. This, she knew, would result in their fame and prosperity, a prosperity that would render the world their playground. But it wasn't to be. For 2 days after Will's departure, Bet awoke with the aforesaid legendary-sized zit, a growth she feared terminal. Chapter 9. Release. Like most of us, Bet embraced denial rather than accept imminent death. So she forsook her beloved mirror and simply pretended all was well, even though it was clear to everyone she'd imploded wondrously. Since none could imagine Will not returning with dispatch, it was universally assumed something else was amiss, but none, parents included, after long years of such, could bring themselves to breach the privacy that stunning beauty bestows. So Bet was free to add layer upon layer of denial as the zit grew and grew, until it was simply too big and sore to ignore. So she raised her arm, held the mammoth purplish-red abomination up to the mirror, and squeezed it tenderly, an amateur self-examination, only to have its white Mount Kilimanjaro tip burst with pressure-releasing relief all over the glass. Further gentle pressure drained the rest of it, as Bet, understanding it had been nothing more than an unusually large pimple, fell sobbing to the floor, happiness fully flooding her being for the very last time. Chapter 10. The Awakening. By the time Will returned a few days later, Bet was a changed person. For, though her underarm had healed, her psyche, unused to aught but personal corporeal perfection, had no resistance to the infection that entered her mind. As a child, had she memorable mumps or measles, or broken a bone or tooth, things might have fared better. But competence, confidence, and luck had been her fate to date, so she spiraled into a folly that her yet formidable beauty barricaded sufficiently to negate inquiry and assistance from all but Will. Chapter 11. The Fall. It took 2 years for Bet to fully believe that to Will she was beauty incarnate, and she was grateful for this wonder. But she still couldn't display herself photographically in a manner that excluded elements of the pornographic, innocent celebratory confidence being the mandatory ingredient for such transcendence. In short, she was now a woman. Chapter 12. Epilogue. Bet, at 25, is still the most beautiful lady Mud Valley has thus far produced. But that is all. For motherhood embraced her shortly after she and Will wed, a motherhood that placed her as contentedly as possible within the wheel of life. As for Will's career, he crafts a respectable living for his growing family by creating beautiful postcards of Mud Valley, as happy as a man who almost touched the stars can be. 9:07. Well, Hollywood, a decade plus ago, I fell in love with photography. Big time. And I want to talk to you about it tomorrow. And yes, Canadian or no, I have to admit, I'm really good at it. I love you.